Good morning, and welcome to Shawnee Mission Unitarian Universalist Church. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome here. If you are new to SMUUCh and want to get to know more about our church, please fill out our Get to Know You form or Get in Touch form using the link in the video description. Or, if you are interested in learning more about Unitarian Universalism, please join our Just the Basics class on June 13th, right after the service. For all of you joining us live this morning, feel free to start posting your joys and sorrows now if you would like the names to be read during candlelighting. And now, a few announcements from our speaker.
Good morning. I am Bernard Narcott-Mahany, a member of SMUUCh, and I know what you're thinking, what's with the hat? Well, our service today is about telling stories and about story, and this is my storytelling hat. It is a joy to see you and to be with you, and an honor to be welcomed into your homes this morning. And I am honored to share this space with Jim Christ, whom you just heard, Sean Cullens, whom you will hear, Lori Levins, whom you heard, and virtually Alex Knapp. And a special shout out to the roadies, Jim and Spring Lennox, who make all this work possible. This coming Saturday, we have the church picnic. Please bring yourselves, your seating, and your food. I look forward to seeing your shining, happy faces, so come to the picnic on June 5th. And the Hogwarts School will be held this summer in July, partly via Zoom, partly in person. If you'd like to come to Hogwarts, kids, get the information from the church email or contact Miss Patrice to get more information. Because together we are better. Together we are a courageous church. Together we are a courageous country. Together we are a courageous globe. Hear these words from Jimmy Neal Smith, director of the International Storytelling Center in Jonesboro, Tennessee. We are all storytellers. We live in a network of stories. There isn't a stronger connection between people than storytelling. In that spirit, come, let us worship together. Please join us for our opening hymn, number 108, My Life Flows On.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the far off fear that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm.
while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
It's chalice lighting time! All you need is a candle, a spark, and some sort of special chalice. And some parental supervision.
Please join me as we light our chalice and affirm that love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with one another. And now, enjoy time for all ages.
Hello. Today for Time for All Ages, I am going to read you a story. The story is Anansi and the Moss-Covered Rock, as retold by Eric Kimmel. It's an Anansi story. Anansi is an African trickster figure, and the illustrations don't show up so well on camera, so I will be reading it from the book. Once upon a time, Anansi the spider was walking through the forest when something caught his eye. It was a strange, moss-covered rock. "How interesting," Anansi said. "Isn't that a strange, moss-covered rock?" Kapow! Everything went black. Down fell Anansi, senseless. An hour later, Anansi woke up. His head was spinning. He wondered what had happened. "I was walking along this path when something caught my eye. I stopped and said, 'Isn't that a strange moss-covered rock?' Kapow! Down fell Anansi again. But this time, when he woke up an hour later, he knew what was happening. "Aha," said Anansi, "this is a magic rock. And whenever anyone comes along and says the magic words, 'Isn't this a strange,' down he goes." "This is a good thing to know," said Anansi, "and I know just how to use it." So Anansi went walking through the forest until he came to Lion's house. Lion was sitting on his porch. At his feet was a great pile of yams. Anansi loved yams, but he was too lazy to dig them up himself. Anansi said to Lion, "Hello, Lion, it is very hot today. Don't you think so?" "Yes, Anansi," said Lion, "it is terribly hot." "I am going for a walk in the cool forest," said Anansi. "Would you like to come?" "I certainly would," said Lion. So Lion and Anansi went walking through the forest. After a while, Anansi led Lion to a certain place. "Lion, do you see what I see?" "Oh, yes, Anansi," said Lion. "Isn't that a strange moss-covered rock?" Kapow! Down fell Lion. Anansi ran back to Lion's house and made off with Lion's yams. An hour later, Lion woke up. His head was spinning. Anansi was nowhere in sight. And when he got home, he found that every single one of the yams was gone. Lion was very sad. But Anansi was very happy. He couldn't wait to play this trick again. Once more, Anansi went walking through the forest. This time he stopped at Elephant's house. Elephant was sitting on his porch. At Elephant's feet was a great pile of bananas. Anansi loved bananas, but he was too lazy to pick them himself. So he said to Elephant, "Hello, Elephant, isn't it hot today?"
It is,
Elephant agreed. I am going for a walk in the cool forest, Anansi said. Would you like to come?
That sounds nice,
said Elephant.
Thank you for inviting me, Anansi.
So Anansi and Elephant went walking through the forest. After a while, Anansi led Elephant to a certain place. Elephant, look, do you see what I see? Elephant looked.
Yes, I do, Anansi. Isn't that a strange moss-covered rock? Kapow!
Down fell Elephant. Anansi ran back to Elephant's house and made off with all the bananas. An hour later, Elephant woke up. His head was spinning. Anansi was nowhere in sight. And when he got home, he found that every single one of his bananas was gone. Elephant was very sad. But Anansi was very happy. He couldn't wait to play the trick again. He played it on rhinoceros and hippopotamus. He played it on giraffe and zebra. He played it on every single animal in the forest. But all this time, watching from behind the leaves, was little bush deer. Little bush deer is small and shy and very hard to see. She watched Anansi play his wicked trick again and again on all the other animals. Little bush deer decided it was time for Anansi to learn a lesson. So little bush deer went deep into the forest to where the coconut trees grow. She climbed a coconut tree and threw down a great many coconuts. She carried the coconuts home in a basket and set them on her porch. Then she sat down beside them to wait. In a little while, along came Anansi. Anansi's eyes lit up when he saw little bush deer's coconuts. Anansi loved coconuts. He loved to eat the tender white coconut meat and drink the sweet coconut milk inside. But he was much too lazy to gather coconuts himself. Instead, he said, "Hello, little bush deer. It is so hot today." Little bush deer smiled. "It is very hot, Anansi. I am going for a walk in the cool forest. Would you like to come?" "Yes, I would," said little bush deer. So Anansi and little bush deer went walking in the cool forest. After a while, Anansi led little bush deer to a certain place. "Little bush deer, look over there. Do you see what I see?" Little bush deer knew all about Anansi's trick. She looked. "No, Anansi, I don't see anything." "You must see it. Look very carefully." Little bush deer looked. "No, I don't see anything," she said. Anansi began to get very angry. "You must see it. Look over here. Look where I'm pointing. Do you see it now?" "No, Anansi," said little bush deer. Anansi stamped his legs. "You see it. You just don't want to say it." "Say what?" said little bush deer. "You know. Is that what I'm supposed to say?" "Yes," said Anansi. "All right. Then I will say it to make you happy." "You know," said little bush deer. "There, I said it. Are you satisfied?" "No," Anansi shouted. You're supposed to say, you're not supposed to say you know. What am I supposed to say?" "You're supposed to say, 'Isn't that a strange moss-covered rock?'" Kapow! Down fell Anansi. Little bush deer ran and got all the other animals. Together they went to Anansi's house and took back all the good things he had stolen from them. An hour later, Anansi woke up. His head was spinning. Little bush deer was nowhere in sight, and when he got home, he found his house as empty as it was before. But if you think that Anansi learned his lesson, you are mistaken, because he is still playing tricks to this very day. This is the time where we expand the caring love of our community. We keep in mind and hold in our heart those in our midst who are struggling and those who feel the sweet relief of their burdens easing. Today we draw to mind those who have served our nation in the military, and especially those who have given their last full measure of devotion that we live and thrive. We also draw to mind those who have devoted their lives to helping the country live up to the ideals of freedom and equity, who call us to be brothers and sisters to one another, and to those who have done so much to help this nation and the world through the COVID pandemic. We give our love and extend a helping hand to those who need it or want it. We give witness to those suffering from injustice and hatred and pledge ourselves to do our part in building the beloved community. We sit with those who feel alone and lost and celebrate our shared humanity. And we rejoice in the exquisite beauty of this world, as small or life-changing as each piece of beauty may be. Please comment in the comments section of the live chat your joy or sorrow. Remember, this moment of sharing happens online and remains public for all viewers joining us today. To join us further together in the beloved community, we will read aloud some of the posted joys and sorrows while I light the candles.
Barbara has a candle of concern for Susan. May she be relieved of pain. Jim Christ has a joy his son and daughter-in-law closed on their first home. Nubia has a candle for good travel for her mother and family. We have a candle of remembrance for all of our fallen heroes. And we light the remaining candles for all the joys and sorrows posted in the chat and for those that remain unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts.
We are going to spend a few moments in meditation. Put your feet flat on the floor, put your hands in your lap, let the corner of your lips turn up and close your eyes. Take a deep breath, let it go. Again, take a deep breath, let it go. Listen to my voice as I tell you a story about St. Kevin and the Blackbird as told by Shawnee. And then there was St. Kevin and the Blackbird. The saint is kneeling, arms stretched out, inside his cell. But the cell is narrow, so one turned up palm is out the window, stiff as a crossbeam, when a blackbird lands and lays in it and settles down to nest. Kevin feels the warm eggs, the tiny breast, the tucked, neat head and claws, and finding himself linked to the network of eternal life, is moved to pity. Now he must hold his hand like a branch out in the sun and rain for weeks until the young are hatched and fledged and flown. And since the whole thing's imagined anyhow, imagine being Kevin. Which is he? Self-forgetful or in agony all the time, from the neck on, out, down through his hurting forearms? Are his fingers sleeping? Does he still feel his knees? Or has the shut-eyed blank of under-earth crept up through him? Is there distance in his head? Alone and mirrored clear in love's deep river, to labor and not to seek reward, he prays, a prayer his body makes entirely, for he has forgotten self, forgotten bird, and on the riverbank, forgotten the river's name. Take one more deep breath and let it out, opening your eyes. And let us take some of that heavenly and selfless spirit as we all join in singing hymn number 16, "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple."
Tis the gift to be simple, tis the gift to be free, tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight, when true simplicity is gained. To bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. 'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight, when true simplicity is gained. To bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
From William Shakespeare's As You Like It. All the world's the stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 stages. At first, the infant, yelling and puking in the nurse's arms. No, that's not good. Let's try this again. From William Shakespeare's As You Like It. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 stages. At first, the infant, mewling and puking in his nurse's arms. And then the whining schoolboy, his satchel and his shining morning face, creeping like a snail, unwillingly, to school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. And then a soldier, full of strange oaths, bearded like the bard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in his fair round belly, with good cap and lined, his eyes severe, his beard formal cut. He's full of wise saws and modern instances, and so he plays his part. The 6/8 shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on his nose, his pouch on his side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice turning again towards childish treble, pipes and whistles in his sound. And last scene of all, that ends this strange, eventful history, is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste. sans everything. The monologue on the 7 stages of man is one of Shakespeare's most famous, even though the play it comes from, As You Like It, is generally considered one of the Bard's lesser works. This monologue is frequently alluded to in everything from works of literature to commercials to Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's spoken by melancholy Jacques, one of Shakespeare's most famous characters, and also possibly his most accidental. Like many of Shakespeare's plays, As You Like It is an adaptation of another work, Rosalind, Youth's Golden Legacy by Thomas Lodge. And quick side note here, if you're aggravated by the fact that every movie these days seems to be a sequel, a remake, or an adaptation, you'd have hated Elizabethan theater, because it was pretty much all that. At any rate, this work told the story of Orlando and Rosalind, lovers who find each other despite the politics of the world around them and the power struggle between the good Duke and his evil brother. The two find themselves wrestling, fencing, cross-dressing, all the good things you'll find in a Shakespeare play. In creating As You Like It, Shakespeare added nearly 10 new characters to the story. The two most famous are Touchstone, who plays the part of jester and fool, and melancholy Jacques, the cynic who snidely comments on all the action around him. Now, one fascinating aspect of the character of Jacques is that for all of his famous speeches, and despite the fact that he has a ton of lines, nearly as many as the two leads, Rosalind and Orlando, he doesn't actually move the story forward. His character doesn't contribute to the plot at all, doesn't move any characters forward, barely has any role apart from making snide comments about the play and the people in it. He's very, very entertaining, and obviously a lot of Shakespeare's best lines actually went into this character, but he doesn't do anything. Fun fact for you, there are some Shakespeare scholars who think that he's not just an addition to the original story that As You Like It was adapted from, but actually the idea is that the play may have been performed several times without the character of Jacques at all. He was an addition added in later in the play, the most common line of thought being that Shakespeare's main leading actor, Richard Burbage, was getting a little long in the tooth and big in the belly, as the contemporary accounts put it, to play the youthful, dashing Orlando. And so Shakespeare basically created a character for the star of his company of players to make his own. But whatever the reason for the addition of Jacques, the idea of having a character who doesn't do anything but becomes an audience and critical favorite is fascinating in its own way. In theater at the time, it wasn't that common for there to be characters whose role was basically just to add snark to the story. Today, it's fairly ubiquitous. It's hard to imagine American TV without these characters. But I would also argue that this kind of cynical character, the snarky character, the person who just says outrageous things to entertain the audience, isn't just ubiquitous in our television. It's not just ubiquitous in our movies. It's become ubiquitous in our life itself. It's been over a decade since social media became a big way for people to communicate. Social media has become a way to gain fame and influence for celebrities, for journalists, and even politicians without necessarily doing anything to move the story forward. You can become famous, you can become a great politician without doing anything. Our elites become almost a nation of Jacques. snidely commenting at each other. We have news articles about comedians and politicians sniping at each other on Twitter, and that's it. That's the story. And you could even go so far as to say that social media encourages you not to be part of the story, to not move the plot forward, but rather to stand on the sidelines snarking. Because the things that you see on social media, they're driven by engagement. The algorithms that decide what content to surface, what things you're going to read, is based on likes. It's based on comments. And let's face it, likes, comments, these things come from emotion. And sober analysis, nuance, hard work, they're all very important, but they're not the thing that gets people's juices flowing. But snark, sarcasm, cynicism, outrage, just being loud and entertaining, well, that does, doesn't it? In Jacques' worldview, all the world is a stage. We're all actors playing out a script written long before us, our parts already laid out. The only decision that we can make is how entertainingly will we play the role? And if that's the case, why bother to change anything? Why bother seeking love? Why bother seeking justice? Why bother seeking advancement or friendship? After all, it's all going to end one way or another. You might as well be entertained. And so here we are, a nation, maybe even a world full of melancholy Jacques. No energetic Orlandos striving to gain their place in the world. No Rosalinds wooing their future husbands by posing as wise young men. No dukes overcoming their struggles through openness and love. Just an endless, repetitive layer of jokes and outrage and snark. A society, to quote one of the other Bar's plays, that's just a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. And so that is the challenge of the era in which we find ourselves. In a war of competing snark and outrage, can we find the courage to reject the idea that we are merely players? Reject the idea that the story is already written for us? Can we seize the mantle of hero? Can we seize the mantle of writer? Of putting our pen to paper and imagining not the sarcastic thing we can say, but rather a new and better world? Or will we let melancholy have its victory? Allow despair to take us over. Stop striving. Stop seeking. Just pepper our days with wry asides and enjoying our only coin, the laughter, or let's face it, in this country, anger of our audience. And so will we end our existence not trying to write a better ending to our story, but just ending the way Jacques predicts. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything.
First of all, thanks to Alex for those heartfelt words so beautifully spoken. Introduction to Poetry by Billy Collins. I asked them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or to press an ear against its hive. I say, drop a mouse into the poem and watch him probe his way out. or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski over the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is to tie the poem to a chair with rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. I am a storyteller. I suppose I've been telling stories for most of my life, but if I had to pinpoint the moment when I heard the call to tell, I'd have to say it was in the summer of 1989. There I was, sitting in the foyer of May Memorial Unitarian Society of Syracuse at one of the monthly open mic nights of the Salt City Storytellers. The first teller up, a children's librarian named Cynthia Bishop, was telling Eric Kimmel's version of Anansi and the Moss-Covered Rock. She was mesmerizing. She took the stage with authority and began, "Once upon a time, Anansi the spider was walking through the forest. It wasn't just her voice or her command of the material, though these helped set the stage. It was that she allowed the story to be embodied in her as she moved about as Anansi was walking. Now, my experience was not quite that of Paul on the road to Damascus, blinded by a light and set upon a new path, or that of Augustine, who heard a child's voice tell him to pick up and read, the moment that led to his conversion. But it was a moment of revelation, something profound that became a fixed point in my mental and spiritual timeline. I had gone to that open mic simply out of curiosity, but from the moment Cynthia Bishop took that stage, I was hooked. I became a member of the group soon after and became a regular teller myself. My own process of reading stories or poems can't really be called a process. I generally flit about, but while I'm flitting, I try to remain open, to hold myself ready for something to wow me, to grab me, to move me. I live for revelation, and if I am patient enough, I know I will find it. I may find it in the tone or the timbre as I hear as I read, or in the rhythm I feel as I scan the words on the page. It may be in the words themselves or in their magic juxtaposition. I am entranced by the physicality of story and its sensual nature, the appearance of words on a page, the sound of them in my ears, the taste of them in my mouth. When I listen to a teller, I am all ears. When I watch a teller or a performer, I am all eyes and ears. And when I read a poem aloud or tell a story, I am aware of the texture of the words and the pacing. Good language tastes great in my mouth. It has a texture, a scrumdiddlyicious crunchiness that makes my mouth water, my mind dance, and my ears tingle. When I tell, I hope to present that magic and wonder in such a way that my audience, which includes me, can take delight in how those amazing words sound and feel. Like Billy Collins, I cringe a little when, in my professorial capacity, I hear students say to me that they want to know what a poem by Catullus means, or what exactly Homer is saying in the Iliad. Now, I know what they're getting at. There's an answer here somewhere, such as they might write down in response to a question on a test. Then they want to move on to the next thing and pigeonhole that too. They have been acclimated to do that, to find the answer to a question or to life. So long as they look for the answer to a poem or a story, they'll find it or accept the judgment of some scholar as to what it is. But what they find will be some desiccated shadow of all that a poem or story is, all the wonder and magic missed in that hunt for meaning. Collins advises his students, not always successfully apparently, to experience the poem as a sensual object, to look at its colors, to press an ear to its buzzing hive, and to play with it, to enter a room and look for the light, to water ski over its surface. That approach can even lead to silliness. dropping a mouse into the poem. And it could lead to wonder and joy. Playing with words, looking for joy and wonder rather than meaning, can wake up one's senses and feelings, make one feel more alive. It is an expansive vision that Collins calls on us to have, to see the wonder and wonderfulness of the Word and the world. It is the path towards love, towards harmony with the divine, a goal we claim for ourselves every week in our covenant, toward revelation. Or we can just tie the poem or the story to a chair, force a confession out of it, a confession that will net us nothing more than a labeling, a diagnosis, and put it and us in a little prison of our own words. I imagine that many of us know the experience of being defined, where we were encouraged to accept certain stories, and certain designations that would define us or limit us. Certainly anyone who is not part of a dominant culture will know that feeling of being excluded or constrained and limited, forced to hide parts of themselves or to deny their truest selves. They certainly know the feeling of that poem tied to a chair. Sadly, story helped them into the seat. The girls I knew in grade school were encouraged to see themselves as damsels in distress. They were told to sit still, look pretty, and wait for their knight in shining armor to save them for heterosexual monogamy in which they would live happily ever after. Now, we can find all sorts of holes in that narrative, yet it still has power. Even if a princess makes her way to a throne, she's still stuck in a chair in a role that confines and defines her. Now, being in a tight little cell was something that St. Kevin was quite familiar with. Seamus Haney invites us, since the whole thing's imagined anyway, to imagine being Kevin. Haney's poem is so sensual that I think we can imagine the claustrophobic cell Kevin is in, about half the size of a small prison cell. So let's enter the poem's room, as Collins would say. Can you see it? And let's imagine the tremendous ache of Kevin's arms and of his knees as he's stuck in that position of kneeling, arms, well, one arm anyways, locked in place. But Haney also speaks in that wonderful phrase of the shut-eyed blank of under-earth that has crept up and become one with Kevin, that holds him and supports him in a way that we may have felt when mom or dad, grandma or grandpa, aunt or uncle held us in their laps and read us a story. Haney's poem tells a positive story, a miraculous story of a person who might be seen as confined, as stuck in his body and in agony, but who instead finds himself linked into the network of eternal life, who knows the interconnected web of all existence, not in the abstract, but in the warmth of the eggs, the tininess of the bird, and in Kevin's own tender feelings for mother bird and her young. Haney's words provide quite a few specifics and set the scene so that we can see it and feel it. Now, as we leave the cell and the poem, we can see Kevin alone and mirrored clear in love's deep river. And we are invited to imagine Kevin's sense of eternity, his oneness with the web of all life that allows him scope, that all those defining words, the words that are part of meaning, can tell us nothing of. As Haney notices, the Kevin who might seem trapped is past all that. Is there distance in his head? Has he transcended all that? And we leave Kevin freed of all defining shackles, forgetting self, forgetting bird, and on the riverbank, forgetting the river's name. Haney helps us imagine all that through the beauty of his words, beautifully arranged. That is the power story can have. For me, it is the power religion can and should have. So as you go on your day and with your lives, I'd like to encourage you to explore story, to listen to a familiar story or to a new one told by a friend, a lover, a parent, or a child. Savor all the particulars. Let the beauty and the wonder of it flood your senses. Open yourselves to the possibility of revelation and see where you may go. Make the story yours, or make your own story. Share that story as an act of holy devotion, and let us gather at the river, sitting on the riverbank, sharing stories, mirrored clear in love's deep river.
The work of the church depends on us. In the context of global and national strife, SMUUCh can create and foster space for connection and healing. We invite you to give generously to support the ongoing work of the church. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared values.
It's a little bit funny, this feeling inside. I'm not one of those who can easily hide. I don't have much money, but boy, if I did, I'd buy a big house where we both could live. If I were a sculptor, but then again, no, or a man who makes potions in a traveling show. I know it's not much, but it's the best that I do. My gift is my song, and the song's for you. You can tell everybody this is your song. It might be quite simple, but now that it's done, I hope you don't mind, I hope you don't mind that I put down in words how wonderful life is now you're in the world. I sat on the roof and kicked off the moss. Well, a few of these verses, well, they've got me feeling a little cross. But the sun's been quite kind while I wrote this song. It's for people like you that keep it turned on. So excuse me for forgetting, but these things I do. You see, I've forgotten if they're green or they're blue. Anyway, the thing is, what I really mean, yours are the sweetest eyes I've ever seen. And you can tell everybody that this is your song. It might be quite simple, but now that it's done, I hope you don't mind, I hope you don't mind that I put down in words how wonderful life is while you're in the world. I hope you don't mind, I hope you don't mind that I put down in words how wonderful life is now you're in the world.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please join us for our closing hymn, 298, Wake Now My Senses.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out for the new. Joining each pilgrim who quests for the truth. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving the hardship to end.
This week, our challenge to you is to pick up a pen and change the story of your life. And when you get to the ending, make sure it's a happy one. Go in peace.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. Let the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.